Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Downtown Hudson Rapid Recovery Plan webinar. We're very happy you're here. We see a few folks coming in. Before we get started, we're going to go through a few housekeeping items in just 2 minutes at officially the 5:30 start time. But please take a seat, enjoy yourself, and we have a pretty packed evening for you. While everyone is coming in, I'll just do a quick housekeeping item, which is that you'll notice that this is a webinar. So your video and also your mic will not be on. That doesn't mean that we don't want you to be asking questions. You'll see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A box. We're going to ask you to utilize that as a tool to ask any questions that come up during the presentation today. And at this point, I'm going to attempt to share my screen as we kick things off. Can someone give me a thumbs up if that's working? Great. Great. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. I see some folks coming in. We can't see your faces, but we know you're here. All right, folks, we're going to get started. Welcome to the Downtown Hudson Rapid Recovery Plan. My name is Jen Emiko Kaplan. I'm an economic development planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'm going to just go through a few housekeeping items before I turn over the mic to some of our team members. So you'll notice that this meeting is being recorded. It is part of the public record. So if you do not want to be part of the recording, your mic and your video are not on tonight because this is a webinar format. But if you don't want your name showing up, then you just don't have to ask any questions. That brings me to my second item, which is that indeed your mic and your video are off. That doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you tonight. We invite you to ask questions using the Q&A box. That should be right at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions accessing it, you can just drop a question also in the chat box. I will note that the chat box only goes to the panelists, so the other attendees won't be able to see that. If you do ask a question, we'll be marking it so that other attendees can see the question that you've asked. And then if we can't answer it right then, we'll be answering it during our Q&A portion at the end of today's event. So I want to, at this point, turn things over to two great folks from the Town of Hudson. The first is Christina Johnson, Acting Director of Planning and Community Development for the town, and Richard Braga, the Executive Director of the Downtown Hudson Business Improvement District.
Thank you, Jen, and good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend tonight's webinar. Thank you for introducing me. I don't have to go through that. But before going any further, I thought it would be nice to take a quick pause and recognize some of the individuals who are in attendance, even though I can't see you. I saw your name on the registration list, and I'm very excited that you're in attendance. First, I would like to give a shout out to Hudson State Legislative Delegation, Senator Jamie Eldridge, and Representative Kate Hogan, both of whom work tirelessly, and I mean tirelessly, to advance the town's economic development and infrastructure priorities. And they're always advocating for the interests of the downtown business district at any opportunity they can. Thank you so much for your advocacy, and thank you for attending tonight. It's always such a pleasure to collaborate with you both. We have some local officials in attendance as well, and that I would like to recognize. First, one of our newest members of the Select Board, just elected on Monday, hitting the ground running, Mr. Sean Sadowski. Thanks for joining in. Next, I would like to recognize John Parent, who recently retired from the Select Board and is a passionate advocate for the business community and for the development of affordable housing. And he is someone that this department, the planning department, has worked very closely with over the past 5 years. Fernanda Santos, she's the town's interim town administrator. We're in between town administrators, and she's stepping up and doing a fantastic job. Sarah Cressy, she's the executive director of the Assabet Valley Chamber of Commerce. If any of you have attended the Farmers Market or Hudson Fest, you can thank Sarah for orchestrating and managing all of those events. Someone who is not in attendance, but I would like to give a shout out to, is Arthur Redding, and he's president of the Downtown Business Improvement District. And but I do want to mention that Chuck Randall, who is the Downtown BID's treasurer, is in attendance, and he owns many properties and many of the beautiful properties that you all love in the downtown. So this webinar is actually part of a statewide program called the Local Rapid Recovery Program. And back in 2020, the town, in partnership with the BID, you're going to hear this theme over and over again tonight, applied to the Department of Housing and Community Development for consultant services to help the town and the BID kind of take stock of where we're at in the current economic climate of the downtown, and to help develop some strategies to pivot and reemerge stronger and more resilient than ever. And we have been working with a terrific team of dynamic and creative economic development planners who are here tonight from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, or as MAPC, you'll hear that acronym, that's how they're known. They are the regional planning agency that serves 101 communities within the Boston metro region. And yes, Hudson is part of the Metro Boston region. And this effort is focused on data collection, and you'll hear the findings later in this presentation. There'll be some polling. But collecting data may not be the most riveting exercise, but it's really important that our post-COVID pivots for the downtown are rooted in good data. Always managing from good data makes good sense. And I think you'll learn from the data tonight that the pulse of our downtown is extremely strong. And one final note before turning over the virtual floor to Richard Braga is that I'm always asked by my fellow municipal planning and economic development colleagues about what the magic ingredient is for Hudson's secret sauce, as everyone calls it. It's really, it's not very imaginative, but it's very important. It's 100% about cultivating strong relationships and sharing common goals and objectives on various economic initiatives. And a really good example of this is the solid relationship the municipality, in particular my department, has cultivated with the downtown BID. And Richard Braga, the executive director of the BID, he calls himself the administrator, but I think executive director sounds much more fancy and more fitting for his title, who you'll hear from in a second, is someone I consider an economic development colleague, but also an adjunct member of the department. I think I go to more meetings with him and talk to him more often than some of my own colleagues in the municipal government itself. So that really solidifies, the strong resiliency of our economic development priorities for the downtown. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Richard, and he's going to go through a brief primer on what a BID is, and then sort of the history of our BID in particular, the traditional program of services that they deliver, and some of the pivots that they made during COVID to better serve the downtown business community. So Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you very much for that nice introduction. And while we're on the topic of introductions, I'd also mention that new Selectman Mike Burks also just stepped onto the meeting, so I'd like him to be acknowledged as well. So I'm going to try to give you a very quick view, say it from 30,000 feet of the BID and a little bit of our history. So the BID is really in part a spin-off of the Hudson Business Association that established itself at the beginning of the recession back in the 2008 timeframe. They got together to try to fix some common problems that affected our downtown area, specifically storefront vacancies, which there were approximately 25 of at the time. And they were pretty successful bringing new business, but they really wanted to take it to another level. So they talked about the formation of the BID really for a couple of years and with a lot of work. And we don't have time to talk about that, but The bid itself formed in November of 2017. We were the smallest bid in the Commonwealth, and we actually began our operations on January 1st of 2018. We've been called small but mighty. We were the very first bid in the state of Massachusetts that received 501c3 nonprofit charitable status from the Internal Revenue Service. We kind of hit the road running as soon as we got formed. We thought it was very important to show our members that we were actually doing something that they could really see and appreciate. And to that end, we took on a number of beautification projects, some of which you may have noticed downtown if you're from our community. Flowers that hang from the street lamps, light balls also on street lamps, benches, trash receptacles. We had sidewalk washing done. We restrung 126 Christmas wreaths that literally had no light bulbs on them to prepare for the upcoming Christmas season. We also held downtown events. Arts Fest was one, 5K run for the arts, a taste of Hudson, and we enhanced the downtown stroll, partnering again with the Hudson Business Association. We also implemented marketing strategies. We drafted sidewalk dining policy regulations that the town had never had before, that were ultimately adopted and approved by the then Board of Selectmen, which now are referred to as a select board. We launched a modern, attractive, and sophisticated website. We encourage you to take a look at it at discoverhudson.org. We added holiday lights that would attract people to the district. We collaborated with the town to hire consultants to design wayfinding signs and engineers to redesign our Riverwalk, providing connectivity from our downtown to our rail trail, which is adjacent to our business district. We also installed live stream cameras that view downtown much like shore communities do, and that's on our website as well. And all that was really great until COVID hit. At that point, we had to decide where we were going. Obviously, it wasn't going to be worth our while to spend all this money on beautification projects if we didn't have any businesses left. So we pivoted and hired a CPA and I personally called over 100 businesses and property owners within our district, advising them that we had put a CPA on retainer, and that CPA would help them navigate through the stimulus packages, help with applications, and he also helps with the forgiveness portion of that, as well as the PPP2 loans that came out. And all that was free of charge to all, not only the property owners who are the actual members, but also their tenants. So really anyone within the downtown business district received those services free of charge. And 68 of our 105 or so businesses took advantage of that. We worked with town officials also to expedite temporary outside dining approvals. We also acted as unpaid real estate agents, trying to match prospective tenants with landlords, and we had some success there. In addition, we created a 5x7 postcard that we handed out to unique businesses, trying to attract them to locate to downtown Hudson. We also work with the planning department on grant applications that were beneficial to both the town and the BID, and established also a grant in 2020 to supplement rent for an arts-related business, and again in 21 for a unique retail business. And two businesses took advantage of those grants and have committed to Hudson. One is Guitars and Grooves, already there, and another one is a home goods store that's in the process right now of trying to locate retail space. As Christina quickly mentioned earlier, we think the secret sauce in Hudson is our own people and the relationships that we've made. We work very closely with other groups such as ourselves the Hudson Business Association, Sarah at the Chamber of Commerce, and most particularly the town. As Christina mentioned, you know, I have a seat on almost everything that has anything to remotely do with downtown. And she has a seat with the BID for literally everything. So we're in constant communication. And we have a great executive board, you know, a president that is very creative and advances our agendas, a vice president that is a visionary and young entrepreneur, a treasurer who is level-headed and community-oriented, and a CPA who offers thoughtful advice, and a secretary that's very action-oriented and incredibly detailed and willing to sit on every committee. So our secret sauce is really our people and our ability to work together as a team, as Christina said. And with that, I'll close and turn it over to Christina again. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I am very remiss in missing our second newest. This is why I do not like the webinar format for Zoom, because I actually like to look at people's faces. And apparently I looked at an old registration list. So we do have two of our newest selectmen, and Michael Burks is the second selectman who I was remiss in recognizing. And again, the whole relationship issue works as well with the select board. This department collaborates on many different policy initiatives with the board. The relationship building is not just with the BID, but it's something we cultivate within our own municipal organization. So with that, I think it's time for the main presentation. So I'm going to turn over the virtual floor to Jen Amico Kaplan, who I've gotten to know over the past month, terrific economic development planner, and her team, who she will introduce, and she will walk us through our presentation and our polling exercise. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Christina and Richard. And I think small but mighty is certainly the perfect adjectives to describe Hudson. And we have seen that collaboration in action. So only good things to say, and we're excited to be here tonight. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Sukanya Sharma, who's a regional land use planner, and Willdorfman, who is an economic development planner. So we're going to kick things off with our presentation here after that warm welcome. And I hope I can share my screen again. Can everyone, can someone give me a thumbs up with their camera on if they can see it? Great, thanks, Will. So thank you so much, Christina, for sort of kicking things off about the program that we are doing with the state, the Department of Housing, Community and Development, the Partners for Recovery program. And one thing I wanted to just emphasize before we went into some more information of what we found during the data diagnostic phase is just we're working on a rapid schedule. So the name of the game is a rapid recovery plan. And so our schedule certainly matches that. We are working with the Town of Hudson and the Business Improvement District over the course of 5 months in 3 phases. The first is the diagnostic phase, where we are gathering this data in order to understand both from a quantitative level what demographics about downtown Hudson. And then we have also done qualitative data through a survey outreach effort that we'll be sharing the results of a little bit later tonight. From there, we'll be moving into a recommendation phase, which at the end of this phase, we'll certainly have more opportunities for public engagement and for you, the community, to share your thoughts and feedback. And then we'll be wrapping up the plan by August. So we're really excited to kick things off here. It's been a great working relationship with the town and the BID. And at this point, we're going to take the focus off of ourselves a little bit and actually ask you all a question. We have a great group here tonight, and we want to hear from you. Why do you visit downtown Hudson? Are you a resident? Are you a business owner? Are you a property owner? Are you just a visitor? And if it's something completely different, please drop it in the chat. And while you might not be able to see it, I will certainly read it out loud. So I'll keep this open for a few minutes. And I'll just give you a little preview. There's a lot of residents here, which is nice. It's wonderful to see the community here represented. Keep this open for a few more minutes. Last chance to vote. I'm gonna give it 10 more seconds and then maybe we can share those results, Will. All right, this is it. Throw in your last votes. All right, with that, if you can do a virtual drum roll at your desk, we're going to share the results. It looks like we have mostly residents here. That's great. We do love to see community representation at these meetings and for certainly what is a really new process. This is the first time that the Commonwealth has embarked upon the Partners for Recovery program. Certainly the situation is unprecedented, but we're really glad to have the community of Hudson here supporting the project, wanting to engage with the project. And we have certainly some business owners here as well. So that's wonderful. So at this point, we're going to stop sharing the poll and we can keep going with our presentation. So I'm actually going to be turning things over to my colleague Sukanya Sharma now to be sharing a little bit more about the data diagnostic phase and what we found through our quantitative data. And Sukanya, you are muted.
Hi, everyone. Oops. I'll be talking about some of the demographic data collected so far as part of our program's diagnostic phase. We are looking at a map of the Business Improvement District. And if we go to the next slide, here is some of the data that we found around the market information, and specifically, this data is helpful to understand the customer base. We collected this data using a combination of sources like census and other data platforms like Esri Business Analyst. Also, in terms of geography levels, the BID district is definitely a smaller geography we are working with. And then the town seems to be a bigger geography, and we wanted to sort of have an intermediate level where we can look at the immediate customer base of the area, for which we chose a 1 mile radius with Main and Broad Street intersection as the center, just to look at the demographic indicators within it. So we are looking at around 10,000 people with median household income and disposable income lower than that of the town, slightly lower. There's also comparatively a younger demographic. The median age of the area, the 1 mile radius, is less than the median age of the town. Also, one interesting factor of the retail leakage surplus factor shows that the local retail of the area has enough supply to not only meet the local retail demands, but it is also able to attract shoppers from outside the area. I'm sorry. The more negative this number gets, the more it means that the retail is serving a large pool of external shoppers and not just the local shoppers. It is a good thing. That said, I want to acknowledge that this is a lot of data and it only shows a part of the picture. It can be used as a guide, but only in conjunction with the broader context, which we want to be very cognizant of. If we go to the next slide, we also looked at some more demographic indicators here, specifically of the customer base that might have some broader set of needs. We can see there are about 1,000 households within the 1 mile radius with at least one person with disability. Important thing to note about customer base. Also, 4% of the population living within the 1 mile radius reports that they don't speak English well or at all. If we go to the next slide, using data collected from various sources, again, we also had site visits as part of our data source. We counted a total of 91 businesses within downtown Hudson. Thank you. We counted about 91 businesses within the downtown Hudson area, out of which 6 were vacant. Important factors to think about in terms of vacancy. We collected additional information to understand the business environment in downtown Hudson, like parking availability, traffic, etc. Administrative capacity is also an important consideration for our understanding. And we found that Hudson BID has earmarked $74,000 for BID programs. Now, I think I'm going to hand it back to Jen to talk a little bit more about existing studies that we are hoping to build upon during this project. So, Jen.
Thank you so much, Sukanya. And please feel welcome to ask any questions about the data that we just presented. I know it's a lot to digest at once, so you can drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll certainly be able to either answer directly there or during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So as Sukanya said, of course, none of this work is done in a silo or in a vacuum. All great planning work has to be built upon other great planning work. So as we embarked upon this process, we have looked at previous plans and studies, or current plans and studies actually too, that are being done in both Hudson and also the region. So part of that is looking at the Nelson Nygaard parking study, which was completed in 2014 to understand both the capacity and nuances of parking within downtown Hudson, a topic I know that is very important to many business owners and property owners within the town. We also have taken a look at the downtown wayfinding program, which is currently in the process of being implemented, and we're excited to see the new signs. They look like they're going to be great. We've also are building upon, of course, the Hudson Master Plan, a comprehensive look at where the direction that Hudson wants to head as they look towards the future, which was completed in 2014. And last but not least, we are also thinking about where Hudson sits within the region. And part of that is taking a look at current work being done by Metropolitan Area Planning Council on the Metro Common 2050 plan, our regional plan. We are in the process of actually gathering feedback and laying out policy recommendations for this regional plan. From now until 2050, and we encourage you actually to take a look at what is being proposed. There's a chance to give feedback. And at this point, also, one of my colleagues will be dropping a link to the survey that we are currently conducting as part of the Metro Common policy feedback process. Great. Sukanya shared a little bit more about some of the quantitative hard data that we've taken a look at as part of this data diagnostic phase for this local rapid recovery plan. That wasn't the only kind of data we covered. There was a business survey that was conducted in April 2021. Hopefully some of you who are attending tonight, especially the business owners, were able to take this survey. But it was meant for business owners and managers within downtown Hudson to share more about business characteristics and satisfaction with location. It was also about sharing the impacts of COVID, of course, and then also thoughts regarding potential strategies to support businesses and improve the commercial district as we move towards the direction of economic recovery for downtown Hudson. So I wanted to share briefly some of those results that we thought were really interesting with you today. So just to kick things off, we heard back from 37 people, so 37 business owners or managers within downtown Hudson, and 51%, so a little bit over half of those respondents had 5 or fewer employees, so really small businesses. And this also includes sole proprietors. The top categories of respondents that we heard in this process were retail, food service, arts and entertainment, and then personal services, which includes hair, nails, eyebrow threading, whatever might fall into that category. And then I think also very significant is that 78% of the business owners or managers we heard from rent their space. So there's a high proportion of renters within downtown Hudson. I think that's important to note as we go through some of the strategies for long-term economic recovery. Oops. So I want to get right to the really, I think, burning question for a lot of us is how has COVID impacted businesses within downtown Hudson? So we know that more than half of respondents have shared that they are operating at reduced hours or capacity, or they had to close their place of business. This is, of course, could be Some of the reduced capacity could be related to the current public health regulations that are in place at both the state level and sometimes at the local level. And then we also heard that 63% of businesses have generated less revenue in 2020 than they did in 2019. This is, of course, in direct relation to what's marked above at operating at reduced capacity. We also heard that 78% of businesses had less on-site customers in January and February 2021 than before COVID. Of course, this could be direct correlation from the fact that you have to have reduced capacity due to public health regulations, but of course could also have other influences, such as people not feeling safe coming downtown, not wanting to be in groups of people. Everyone's at a different vaccination status. And so I just wanted to highlight those as impacts of COVID. And the last thing I wanted to note is we did hear from how businesses reported being impacted by COVID, that 65% incurred expenses to implement safety measures. So that, of course, has a direct influence on also the revenue generation if you're spending that much more on operational costs. Are businesses satisfied with the commercial environment in downtown Hudson? So we did hear from 46% of businesses that they did feel that some of the regulatory environments within the town of Hudson posed an obstacle. We looked into the rough data for this. It was mostly related to signage regulations and parking regulations, certainly things that we'll be keeping an eye on as we move into the recommendation phase. Within the physical environment, so that was the regulatory environment, within the physical environment of downtown Hudson, people reported being generally satisfied with their public spaces, conditions of private buildings, proximity to complementary businesses. And then there was a special satisfaction, is what I like to call it, about the safety and comfort of the customers and employees who are visiting. I think an important point to think about as we think about what reduced capacity really means, how has that played out? Oh, and I think and here we go. And then finally, I wanted to present a little bit more information on what district revitalization strategies are businesses interested in. So we heard from businesses largely that they are interested, of course, in receiving some kind of assistance. And more specifically, we heard that business owners and managers are interested in receiving low-cost financing for purchasing property. I brought up a little bit earlier, close to 75% of business owners and managers in downtown Hudson are renters. So of course, there's direct correlation right there. And also interested in participating in shared marketing and advertising. And then within the specific strategies that were shared, perhaps a more standard set of strategies for commercial revitalization, largely business owners and managers felt that it was important across the board to have more cultural events, to recruit programs and additional businesses, to have more opportunities for outdoor dining and selling, something I know that has it's been a huge boom in the past year, and perhaps this opportunity to be outside more and feel that you can move through the commercial district more freely than before. And then also, they felt it was important to implement marketing strategies for the district. So again, that's a lot of information that we're presenting in a short amount of time, and I do invite you to drop questions in the Q&A box that we can cover following the presentation. And because it's never fun to hear all of us just talk, we're going to run another poll. We want to hear from you again. Last time we asked why you visit downtown Hudson. This time we're hoping we can hear from you how often you visit downtown Hudson. So thanks, Will, for running that poll. See, we are neck and neck with some of these results. I wish you could see this. I don't know what's going to happen. This is nail biting. I'm going to keep the poll open for a few more seconds. Perhaps you have a trip planned to downtown Hudson following this meeting. That certainly counts. All right, let's give it 10 more seconds for the poll, and then we'll share the results. I always wished I could have found a way while we've all been remote to have some sort of like drum roll that can be installed as an extension on Zoom. Wouldn't that be great? I feel like that would be a lot of fun. And at this point, we're going to end the poll and share the results. So as you can see, it is once a day, which does run consistent with both of you, most of you being residents of Hudson and downtown Hudson, but it's wonderful to know the affinity that you feel with downtown Hudson. And a pretty close behind, though, is once a week. And I love that everyone has been to downtown Hudson. That is just such a good sign. So at this point, we're going to stop sharing our screen, stop sharing the results. And I am going to reshare my screen again. And I'm going to turn things over to Willdorfman, who's an economic development planner with our team at MAPC, to share a little bit more about some of the results of our physical site assessment, the tours that we took, and how that's going to tie into the recommendation phase of our work. Take it away, Will.
Thanks for the introduction, Jen. Hello, everyone. My name is Willdorfman, and I am an economic development planner with the MAPC. Over the last few weeks, our staff, along with the Town of Hudson and the Hudson BID, have conducted multiple site assessments to understand the conditions on the ground. As part of the LRRP program with DHCD, we have submission requirements to understand the condition on the site. So understanding streetscape conditions, business conditions, and have basic baseline data that we're required to submit. However, as we are going through the recommendation phase, we'd love to hear more from the community members to understand what they would like to see, other things that are being noticed. So throughout our visits, we created a site map note as seen in the presentation through Jamboard to kind of summarize the key points through our site visits, to kind of to kind of have a better understanding of the layout of the BID and the business and the condition on the ground. Of note, there are multiple opportunity sites for potential redevelopment that we have been able to make notes of note. The Armory sites, the former National Guard Armory site along Washington Street, or I should say Park Avenue, is one of probably one of the most exciting opportunities to have redeveloped within the BID boundaries. The building is historic, built around 1910, around the time of the main streets being rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1894. Until recently, it was an active National Guard armory, although it was vacated within the last 10 years. So there's been a lot of talk about how to repurpose the sites for the best use. So right now, there's currently a nonprofit community arts organization working with the town to facilitate funding for the acquisition and future rehabilitation of the armory to be used as a community center to allow community use. Again, providing activation for a vacated space in a central node within the BID's boundaries. Just right across the street from the armory was a former McDonald's that was recently demolished. Another great opportunity for redevelopment. The building was demolished back in 2017. Right now, the property owner is currently investigating options for redevelopments with potential mixed use opportunity with residential and extra commercial space. Again, another great opportunity to connect the southern portion of Washington Street with the rest of the downtown that sees the most activity, especially along Main Street. Of notes of a major project that was recently completed in that area, MassDOT did a reconstruction of the Aspet River Bridge back in 2018 as part of the accelerated bridge program. So with the investment going on in that area, there's a lot of opportunity that's currently in the works. Additionally, further east on the eastern portion of the downtown, there is an opportunity along 136 Main Street. Currently, the redevelopment status is currently unknown with the property. However, in early 2021, there was a potential to submit a site application for to the planning board for redevelopment, which would include a mix of, again, housing and retail. This would be a great node to connect, to serve as a gateway coming from the east into Main Street to fill in a void and to serve as, again, as a gateway coming into the central part of the bid. While there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of activity going on, there's always more potential for better activation. While our notes are from our general assessment, we always like to hear from the community members, the ones who based off our poll results, who are there once a day, once a week, to hear more about what they see within the community, what they would want to see. And so we're always here to better understand what the community is looking for, and we are always happy to take any recommendations and take any input that we see. So with that, I won't take too much of your time, and I'll turn it back over to Jen, who will go over the next steps in the process.
Thanks so much, Will. And as Will said, please do drop some thoughts in the Q&A box or in the chat if you want to just message us directly. We want to hear from you. This is going to be an iterative process. So this also, speaking of iterative process, before we do some closing remarks, I just want to share some more opportunities and ways in which you can engage with the Downtown Hudson Rapid Recovery Plan. So one of them is that we are conducting a community survey. This is going to be open until hopefully the end of the month or a little bit longer. And we're going to drop a link into the chat today, so you'll be able to access it. It's really about taking a pulse on the economic health of downtown Hudson. We want to hear from you. How are things going? Those of you who visit here, or live in downtown Hudson, visit once a week. Please share with us what you think is currently going on in downtown Hudson. And additionally, I want to issue a challenge, nothing scary, just that we want you to share this link with 10 of your neighbors. They don't have to be direct neighbors. Maybe it's someone that you work next to if you're a business owner in downtown Hudson, or maybe maybe it is actually physically a neighbor, but we invite you to share this link with at least 10 people that you know who also are invested in economic recovery of downtown Hudson. And we also invite you to participate in our second forum, which is going to be happening towards the end of the second phase of this rapid recovery plan, which is going to be towards June, the end of June. So you should look out for an invite around mid-June for something happening at the end of the month. And with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so that we can turn things back over to Christina and Richard to give some closing remarks for our presentation today.
Thank you. That was very informative presentation and a good overview of the socioeconomic data that really is showing the resiliency of our downtown. For those that are still on the webinar, feel free to ask any questions through the chat, whether it's something related to the downtown, or you have two folks here, a town official and the executive director of the BID. We'd be happy to take any questions. Maybe because it's so nice outside that everybody wants to go water their plants and mow the lawn.
Thanks so much.
We have a shy group, which is unusual for our people in Hudson.
Maybe a prompting question might get folks thinking. One thing I know I'm curious about, and I'd love to hear from people within the Q&A box, is just what was the most surprising thing to you about the data analysis of the data that you saw, the sociodemographic data, and also perhaps the business survey data? What was the most surprising? And actually, as I say that, it looks like we do have a question. I love that. It is from anonymous attendee. And And so the question, and perhaps this is a good one for Christina and Richard to tackle together, is what are the concerns around parking?
Would you like me to go first?
Yes, please.
Parking management is always a concern in any downtown business district, whether it's Hudson or whether it's a big city. I think for Hudson, what we're continuing to focus on is the management piece. I know we hear all the time, we need to construct more parking, we need structured parking. And if you look at the 2014 parking study, and a lot of that still kind of holds true today, we have a lot of available parking. It's just, it may not be the parking spaces that are in the most ideal location within the downtown. You know, for many years, folks, you know, especially long-standing residents of this town and business owners may remember that you could just pull up next to your business and stay there. And there wasn't this demand for parking as much. And I think folks can keep in mind that the demand for parking means we're vibrant, we're busy, but it's available. But I think what the opportunity we have here, and actually the team at MAPC is going to be helping us with this, something that has been on my wish list for a long time, is actually putting a town sanctioned map that outlines the locations of the different parking facilities and what the time restrictions are. Right now, it's just codified in traffic rules and regulations, and you can't expect visitors or even residents to, well, go look in the rules and regs. No, they want to see a map. Okay, I can park here all day, or, you know, I can only park on the street for 2 hours. And another thing that occurred actually right before post-COVID is we stepped up enforcement. And that's really important to ensure the turnover of the spaces in and around the businesses, because the businesses need the turnover and need to have the customer parking. And actually a retired police officer who Richard knows pretty well, who is a very diligent parking enforcement officer. I have had many parking tickets as a municipal employee, is really helping to turn over the parking. I think some issues we're going to be facing as our town is looking towards more residential development is overnight parking. You know, how do we handle that? We do have some overnight parking, but we don't have parking ratios in our downtown zoning. There are no prescribed parking ratios, and we encourage developers to offer some creativity with the planning board to create some offsite parking opportunities. But as we do more residential, there's going to be more of a demand for overnight parking, because a lot of the sites within the downtown, as was pointed out, they're dimensionally constrained. They have a lot of development constraints and things like that. So maybe Richard, if you want to talk about the BID's perspective on parking.
Well, as you can all tell, Christina was very knowledgeable about everything that relates to downtown, and that includes parking. So she covered pretty much everything I would have thought of. I would point out that we've made an agreement with Avidia Bank that we use their private lot for evening parking on the weekends, which are really the busy times downtown. That gives us an extra 45 spaces there. That's worked out pretty well. And from the BID's perspective, you know, obviously we too agree that it's important to keep traffic moving. The parking control officer does really a great job doing that. I think that you know, in the future, we'll try to explore maybe other parking alternatives where we can maybe partner with some kind of private lot, people that own private lots, you know, as needed as time goes on. You know, and as things reopen, I've noticed just in the last few weeks, there's more cars downtown, let's say, than there was over the course of the last week. So we've also talked about valet parking for restaurants. It's another thing that's been on the BID's agenda. So this is a constant topic that I think over time we'll have some ideas for.
And I should say that the select board have a policy of not, or traditionally, since I've worked here, we do not lose any on-street parking spaces to the greatest extent feasible. They are very passionate about maintaining the on-street parking opportunities, even when we have very complex infrastructure projects where we're recapturing the Rotary is something I'm thinking of in particular, where we're recapturing the public realm, still trying to make sure that we're keeping those on-street spaces. Looks like there's some additional questions trickling in.
We've started a conversation. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine and Richard, for that excellent answer, very detailed. And a good follow-up question is related to parking, but also individual mobility through the downtown is, are there any thoughts currently about putting up additional bike racks and bike spaces to encourage alternatives to car travel?
The short answer is yes. We're very committed to making downtown accessible for all users, whether they're on bikes or whether they're pedestrians. As part of the Mass DOT Complete Streets Grant, we installed bicycle racks at various locations. The rail trail doesn't quite it kind of bisects the downtown. It doesn't go directly through the downtown, but I know the business community is very passionate about having more bike accessibility. It's better. It's good for their business. You know, they have folks coming off of the rail trail, and we see that as an economic development initiative. Something I would like to do sometime in the future is actually undertake a real bike and ped plan for the town, so we can actually have a master plan for how we think about alternative modes of transportation. Electric vehicle charging is part of that as well, you know, offering opportunities for more charging stations and how to incorporate that into the review of new development that comes through the town. Really great questions, and something that this department is very passionate about, as well as the BID. So the short answer is yes, there are plenty of more opportunities to increase bicycle parking and bicycle travel within the downtown.
That's great, Christina. And of course, you know, as we mentioned before, with looking at previous studies and sort of the work that the town is already doing, our plan's also going to be taking that into account as well, pedestrian and bike mobility. So we have a few more questions coming in now, which is very exciting. So I'm going to pull up the next one that we have. It looks like was the business survey sent to all BID members and/or businesses in the BID area, even the nonprofits such as the churches or the representative groups? What percentage of respondees is represented in the total of 37? If you're able to share what type of businesses / orgs responded, thank you. And that is from Nancy Rogers. Thanks, Nancy. Great question. I can talk a little bit about the breakdown of industry representation. If perhaps, Richard, you want to take on how the outreach happened for the business surveys.
Sure.
Great.
I have a distribution list that has most all that I've been able to capture, at least. I think there's 137 presently email addresses on that distribution list. That includes the property owners and all the businesses and nonprofits and town-owned buildings that are within the district.
Great. And to answer your question, Nancy, yes, nonprofits are represented and were sent the survey, and they certainly were represented within the actual survey respondents. Not many, and perhaps we want to do a little bit more, hear from more. We heard from 2 nonprofits, individuals who assign themselves as either part of a nonprofit or community services. And then in terms of what types and businesses that responded, I can give you a little bit more of an idea of some of the top industries and of course of some of the others as well. So 27%, so 37 people responded to the question itself, and then 27%, which is approximately 10, quick math, were part of retail. Quickly following that, 22% had food service and accommodation businesses. We also heard from folks who were in personal service, which is hair, skin, nails, dry cleaning. That was about 11%. And also 11% was arts, entertainment, recreation, and fitness. Following that, it was a little bit less in each category, I would say. We heard from folks within finance and insurance. That was about 8%. And then we also heard from other, which can often include, sometimes it's businesses that are often within the categories represented if folks feel like they might represent a very specific kind of business, but we didn't hear any open-ended questions there. And then we also heard from folks within the healthcare industry, which is medical, dental, and other health practitioners. And of course, I already mentioned the nonprofit community service. So those were each about 2 to 3 responses. So I hope that answered your question. And we certainly want to hear that just because the business survey is over does not mean that the outreach process is over. We would love to hear from you if you're a business owner or a property owner within the community survey, or please feel welcome to email us. Really, it's email myself or Christina. Sorry to Christina to volunteer you, but as
my job, I'd love to hear from folks.
I know you do, which is why I felt okay saying it. So we certainly want to hear from you as we go through this process and move into the recommendation phase.
Jen, I can take the next question that's on the hit list. I figured out how to act. I've never actually been a panelist on a webinar because I always do my Zooms with everybody on the screen. So I finally figured out how to actually see the line of questionings, the questions that are coming in.
You've reached Zoom level then.
Yes, and a very good question, actually. So our downtown, has expanded its tentacles. So we have the BID, which is a different geographic area than really what we think of as the downtown and the zoning district. And we keep expanding our tentacles as, the outer limits of the downtown start to redevelop and the land uses are reimagined. And right on the outskirts of the BID district is a site on Broad Street. It's 15 Broad Street. And actually this past October, the town demolished this really dilapidated, contaminated. It was the scariest building I've ever been in. I think it was haunted. It was horrible. It was the subject of an EPA Superfund cleanup effort in 2017. Long story short, the town got grant money from Mass Development to demolish it and reimagine the use of that site. As you can imagine, the site went through an environmental due diligence. The town still does not own the property. The town is in tax title litigation with the property owner. And I think at the end of the day, the town would like to create a surface parking lot because we think there'll be a land use restriction and that would be the only viable use for that property. And it makes sense. We do need some additional parking opportunities, especially on that end of the downtown. But the status at the moment is we are still conducting our environmental due diligence. We believe there may be additional cleanup that's required, which takes more money and more grants and more agencies involved. So it's probably going to be a while, but the end goal is to have that operating as some type of surface lot. How it's organized in terms of overnight or all day, that nobody really knows. But we think that it's possible to stripe in 40 spaces on that lot. But that's sort of the status of that. But that's certainly important to the BID as well as the town to create some more parking opportunities. And I can certainly answer there was another question about the Rotary, if you want me to keep going. And Dick, you can chime in on this.
Yes.
There was a question asked about whether or not the construction of the Rotary helped or hurt businesses. And I think for those that were familiar with the planning of the project, and actually Michael Burks, who was the police chief at the time, was a member of the design steering committee, as well as a couple members of the BID, including Chuck Randall and the owner of the Rail Trail Flatbread Company. This project was envisioned as a placemaking project, not as a traditional Mass DOT bridge replacement or, roadway reconstruction. This was really about creating infrastructure that supported mobility of all users and enhance the vibrancy of our downtown. This project was never envisioned to move traffic through our downtown at level of service A at 40 miles an hour. It was really designed to slow and calm the traffic down and to create that sense of space. And for those that, the project team has been out there, it is an amazing piece of public space that it knits together. And I would say if you asked any of the businesses whether the Rotary helped or hurt, I think they would say it helped. And I think the construction of the Rotary project couldn't have come at a better time during COVID, when we needed more public realm than ever. And outside dining season got extended. Who ever thought we'd be eating outside in December, right? Well, we had the public space to accommodate that. What were there some consternations and some anxiety about parking and what's going to happen, and people were nervous. It's construction. It's something different. But I would say that this project is extremely successful and has supported really the resiliency of our downtown.
I would concur. From the BID's perspective, the redevelopment of the Rotary has been nothing but a positive. And as Christina said, of course, there were, occasional bumps in the road, if you will, no pun intended, that, created a little bit of anxiety for people, sidewalks that were ripped up in front of their stores. But as also Christina mentioned, it was really the perfect time to do that. Many businesses were not in full operation, and the construction period was much shorter than normal due to the fact that there wasn't anywhere near as much traffic as you would normally expect. And the end result was really fantastic. Not is it only safer for motor vehicles, but certainly safer for pedestrians with bump out crosswalks, wider sidewalks. It's just a beautiful design. And I think I speak for the BID when I say that it was a tremendous success.
That's great. Thank you, Christina and Richard. And it looks like we don't have any other open questions, but we did receive a nice comment from an anonymous attendee, just agreeing with you about the parking, and that any busy city parking is a nightmare. And it's nice to have a little walk around Hudson.
It could be worse. We could have 4 MBTA. I used to work for the city of Quincy, and Quincy is a major MBTA hub, and several of the parking facilities for the MBTA are in the middle of neighborhoods. So you can imagine the parking issues that big cities face. But it's all relative, and we're doing the best we can to manage the assets that we have to the greatest extent feasible. Because I think everyone likes this, well, let's construct a surface parking lot, or let's construct a parking garage. But I would rather see a development on a site that brings in tax revenue and, is, a higher and better use that adds to the downtown. And parking garages don't always necessarily do that. And they're actually, in my professional experience, they're money losers. They don't make money. They just don't. So, but yes, parking is going to continue to be an ongoing concern as we continue to grow and flourish as a downtown.
Thanks, Christina. I want to invite folks to add any other questions that they might have in terms of about the presentation. We just keep getting some nice comments. Looks like we have a nice comment from Jeanette Millard.
Yes, you can't believe everything you read on Facebook, because if you did, you would be discouraged. Thank you for that comment.
Fantastic. And Jeanette asked a follow-up question if the presentation will be available online. It will be. We are recording it, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and that is for the purposes of being able to share it later. So folks won't be missing anything. Please, just like we asked you with the community survey, share it with your neighbors, share it with your fellow business owners, fellow property owners. We want more people to be engaged with the process, because this is going to be a community-informed plan. Any other questions? I'm gonna
Thank
give
you,
it a few
Sarah, for that compliment. They are a great team.
And you'll see that Sukanya just dropped another link to our community survey in the chat box that you can see as well. It's going to be open until the end of the month or a little bit afterwards. And we encourage you to take it. Again, the purposes are to understand the economic health of downtown Hudson as you perceive it, and also what recovery strategies you'd recommend moving forward in this planning process.
I think we might be done.
I think that might be it as well.
Is NASA going to do their launch tonight? Isn't that like 8:04? Did they scrub it? It's like the 4th night that they've tried to do the rocket launch that's going to make the sky go green or something.
We can't compete with NASA. That is a
I'm not
hard
competing
one to
with
compete
NASA.
with. Well, thank you everybody who showed up tonight, asked some excellent questions. Thank you so much, Christina, Richard, Will, Sukanya. And with that, unless there are any remaining questions, which I don't see any coming in, it will be the end of our meeting.
Thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you, folks. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And good night.
Thanks for the
And-
MAPC people too. They did really done a great job.
100%.
Richard. Thanks, Christina.
100%. All right. Good night, everyone.